to the Leading Sheep webinar series on nutritional management of spring lambing merinos to ram more lambs, featuring Dr John Milton from Independent Lab Services in Western Australia.
We've got to grow our lambs out to achieve their genetic potential. They must achieve their genetic potential for both body growth and wool growth. And that, once we got those live lambs on the ground, is going to be, certainly in the first 3 or 4 weeks, is going to be up to their mother. Okay, so we've now got them bonded, and we're going to, the mother will need to be well fed so that she's got a large intake of metabolizable energy. Basically, just think of energy that makes things go, protein makes things grow. So she needs a large intake of metabolized energy. So how large? Well, it's about 3 times the ME intake required just for maintenance. So up to about day 70 of pregnancy, that maintenance requirement of the ewe is the same as a dry ewe, or very similar to a dry ewe. And basically, if it was, say, for a 70 kilo, say a 60 kilo ewe, it's around about 8 megajoules a day she needs, walking around the paddock, keeping her upright, that's for maintenance, keep her organs ticking over, harvesting the food, digesting the food. Maintenance must be met before we get production. But once we get production, as in a lactating ewe, that energy requirement, that metabolized energy requirement, will be about 3-fold in a twin-bearing ewe, for a twin-bearing ewe to produce enough milk to sustain good growth rates in those lambs. So she needs that large intake of energy, ME, and it's about 3 times. She will mobilize some fat if she's in good order, and another good reason to have them in score 3, so they've got a bit of fat to mobilize, and that will help meet the energy requirement, but it certainly won't go reduce it to anywhere near that maintenance level. So it's certainly, generally, a rule of thumb, you can say 2.5 times to 3 times maintenance requirement of energy for a lactating ewe. She needs protein. That doesn't need to be overly done. 11, 12% protein in their diet's probably more than adequate. But because she's now she's got rid of her lambs, they're on the ground, they're following her instead of her carrying them around. She's got plenty of room in her stomach, plenty of room in her rumen, so she can eat a lot of feed, and so she can get the protein intake that way. Also, she can get the energy intake that way, but she's going to need, again, because it's such a large increase in energy, she needs a reasonable concentration of ME in the diet. They need their essential minerals. As you know, we're all told that you've got to have, calcium for milk, but they also need phosphorus. Phosphorus is involved in all energy transformations in the body, so they need adequate phosphorus for for the ewe to synthesize that milk, to assimilate the components of the milk, as well as her own maintenance. But so phosphorus is involved in all energy transformations in the body, and I think it's everyone gets a bit carried away with calcium. In fact, calcium can impact on phosphorus availability, but it certainly, phosphorus can be something that is overlooked, and I think it has been overlooked in many parts of Australia, particularly in sheep. Okay, we know it's important in cattle, but it is also important in sheep, certainly in lactating sheep and young growing animals, where they've got a high energy requirement and they need to metabolize a lot of nutrients. I've got roughage in there. They certainly need roughage, and down the slide you'll find out why. So I say plus roughage. They can eat a lot of roughage because they've got room now in their stomach. They need all these goodies to produce that big volume of milk with the adequate levels of protein, lactose, minerals, and fat. One of the points about the fibre is fibre ferments to acetate, the first of the volatile fatty acids, which are a major energy source in ruminants. Okay, they're fermented in the rumen, and acetate is basically vinegar. It ferments to, as a fibre, is fermented to mainly acetate, and acetate is used for fat synthesis in the body. And merino milk merino milk is up to 9% fat. We've done a lot of, well, not me, but colleagues here at UWA have had experiments, a lot of experiments milking ewes, and merino milk certainly is very high in fat, probably because the volumes are lower, but certainly up to 9% fat. So it's a very good energy source for the lambs. That fat, remembering, is that that fat is probably at least 2¼ times the energy value of carbohydrates and protein. It is important, so we need that fibre in the diet to produce acetate, to produce fat. And particularly if your ewes aren't in good order at lactation, if they've got down on you in lactation, they will need to, early lactation, when they're really milking off their back as well, they hit peak lactation about 3 weeks. If they're really hitting their straps and they're dropped in condition down around score 2, they will need that fat because that acetate being produced, because they're not mobilising a lot of fat from their back. Okay, they haven't got it there to mobilise. There are different chain-link fatty acids. The acetate is mainly used for short-chain fatty acids, but still it is important to have that adequate fibre to meet that fat, which is a good energy source for those lambs. Also, roughage fills the ewes up. Okay, it keeps those ewes filled up. It keeps them contented. They're down chewing their cud, right? Lying down, chewing their cud, working on that fibre, filled up, and quite contented. That's very important. You know, the ad for the carnation milk from contented cows. Well, here we got to have contented sheep. Another point which has been pushed in some other areas is in enhancing rumen development in the lambs. And I think this is something that's really has to be done and has to be considered more. And if you are hand feeding and you are feeding grains, certainly you will, provided you've got fibre there that the lambs are getting access to, you will get more. It will get with the NSC stands for non-structural carbohydrates. So this is the starches and the sugars in the feed. Now a lot of your feeds do have sugars, and particularly when they're actively photosynthesizing, and that is green, obviously. If you get rain on your dry pasture, a lot of those sugars are leached, and so your non-structural carbohydrates are important, along with the fibre, and to enhance that rumen development in the lamb, to enhance that musculature of the rumen, but more importantly, the absorptive surface, those papillae, stimulating papillae development. And there's some very interesting photographs if someone wants to Google into Penn State University on that subject on calves, on enhancing rumen development. And the last point here, but not the least, and needs to be emphasised, is that lactating ewes need a good supply of quality water. They do need that good supply of milk, even though it's got 9%, it's probably at least 85% water, and so they've got to have that good supply of quality water to meet their large demand for milk production. Some of these ewes will be producing 2.5, 3 litres of milk for twins. We don't see it until we take the lambs off and take the lambs away, but because the lamb's always at the milk bar and removing that milk. But those udders, particularly, you know, if they're well fed and they've been stimulated, those ewes will have very good udders. So there's a lot of milk being produced, and a big part of it, the greater part of it, is water. So they've got to have quality water, and of course that means water that's not high in salt. So you've got to dedicate that better water, and thinking about the management of paddocks to those ewes that are lactating. Okay. I put this last one in particularly for Queensland because I think it's, and my clients in the northwest have certainly found that quality bush hay can be a very useful roughage. Mitchell Flinders grass, curling barley Mitchells and Flinders grasses, probably not the bull Mitchell, but those sort of grasses, you know, you do get good seasons. You had a few of them a little while back after a number of years of treacherous seasons, But when you get those good years, that's when you need to put that hay away. Probably get it before it's fully set seed, and you can cut it then. It won't be overly high in protein, 7% maybe at the best, probably 8.5 megs, 9, but I don't think you get out to 9 megs, what I've analysed of it. But it can be a valuable, useful source of roughage. And the thing is, in early pregnancy, up to around about that day 80, 70, 80 of pregnancy, irrespective of whether they've got twins or singles on board, they don't need much more than maintenance. And if you've got 8.5 megs of energy, and you can stimulate that protein a little bit more with a lick or something like that, you can maintain those ewes in early pregnancy. Admittedly, as they advance in pregnancy, their demands, and I'll touch a little bit on this before I wind up, their demands in pregnancy, particularly in late pregnancy, where the fetus is making the most rapid growth, they're definitely going to need good quality feed there. They're going to need that higher ME intake. It rises about 2 to 2.5 megajoules for a twin above a single because of the fetal growth, the rapid growth of those fetuses in the last part of pregnancy. So your hays can be valuable up to in the early stages of pregnancy, but later on they've got to have either quality feed or supplements, and that's certainly going to have to include some grains or your cotton seeds, fuzzy cotton seed, those sort of products. But here the simple thing is that she's got, in late pregnancy, the last 6 weeks, she's got that high nutrient demand, and she physically can't fit the food in. They physically can't fit the fibre in because to put it a little bit crudely, they've got a gut full of lambs pushing on the rumen. And it's that actual gut full of lambs pushing on the rumen is part of the strategy that kicks the grain out of the rumen for the colostrum strategy, pushes it out so it's not fermented in the rumen. So that they physically can't handle that large quantity, large bulk of feed, so they've got to have a more concentrated feed to meet that nutrient demand of that high nutrient demand, particularly for glucose, for that rapid growth of the fetuses, and so consequently, you've got to go to more concentrate feeds at that stage.